The Auckland Theatre Company has released its new season of shows for 2023 when it will celebrate its 30th birthday. And joining me now is art director and CEO Jonathan Bielski.
Hi, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's been a tough time for a lot of companies since the COVID-19 pandemic, and arguably performing arts was probably one of the most affected. How has the theatre company survived?
Well, it has been tough. There's no getting out of it. The last 3 years have been really difficult. And the year we're in actually is the toughest of the three. This has been a really difficult year for our company and the performing arts more generally, because I think the tail that's coming out of the pandemic is just much bigger than probably anyone is liking to talk about too much.
So you got more support early on?
Yeah, we did. There was significant government support in year one in 2020 and also for the Auckland lockdown in 2021. But as we moved into 2022, there was a kind of a different level of support that was provided for all business, not just the arts. And we've really seen a really extended period of not being able to operate at the beginning of the year. We couldn't start operation until May. And that's a big deficit for us to carry, and we don't expect government to just pick up the tab. We all have to kind of contribute to this somehow. But it's a big deficit for us to carry for the year. But we kind of balance that with a sense of optimism because we are seeing audiences return. So the actors and the playwrights are back making the shows and they're back with gusto, and audiences are building. We haven't seen them return to historical norms, but they are building.
So your financial accounts obviously don't make pretty reading.
No.
And you made a loss last year. How soon before you think you can get back to at least break even?
We think 23 is the year that we'll get back to break even. We are just in the process of resizing our business and thinking about what next year needs to look like. It's fair to say when we planned 2022 and we made our decisions about the 2022 calendar year, that was back in June of 21. And it's hard for us to project backwards in New Zealand to how we were at that moment in time, pre-Delta, pre-Omicron. And we never imagined that the pandemic was behind us, but we didn't foresee nearly a year of being closed from August of 2021 through to May of 2022. So that wasn't something we foresaw, and it's hit us very hard. It's hit a lot of people very hard. We're just, because we're a charitable organisation that just gets by with help from its friends, as there's not much left over at the end of the day to keep us going. So fortunately we're okay, but it is tough. There's no question about it.
How has that help from friends gone? So are you getting the donations and the corporate sponsorship as well, or has that been impacted?
We're not so much corporate sponsors. The sponsors that we have remained faithful, and we appreciate that. And our funders, which is principally Auckland Council and the New Zealand Government through Creative New Zealand, they've maintained the faith. But we have had significant donations from ticket holders, and that's made a really big difference. So as we would reschedule or cancel shows, we would invite people to make a donation of their ticket instead of asking for a refund. And many people did donate that money, and that's made a huge difference. And you add that together with, obviously we've been able to do we've had to do cost savings as well, but you add that together with wage subsidy and resurgent support payment, it makes a big difference. Without those, we would have faced a pretty catastrophic situation.
Obviously, your predecessor didn't survive, which is how the Auckland Theatre Company came into being, and the pop-up globe is gone. What do you think you need to do differently to make sure you do survive?
Well, we have to size our business in such a way that the costs and the revenue meet, at the very least. Our colleague of mine once described running a performing arts organisation like landing an A380 on a coffee table. And I think it is a little bit like that because, ours is a $9 million business, and what we're aiming for is to break even. And the reason why we're looking to break even is because ultimately we exist for community benefit rather than for creating shareholder dividend. So we're not looking to make a profit. We're just looking to have enough in the bank to get us through the difficult years. So we want to maximise the resource we've got in the years that we've got it, which is why we kind of try to land at a roundabout break even each year. And the last few years has not been easy to do that. But we have to get back to some kind of norms for us because we just don't have the depth of resilience to just keep going. There's sort of practical realities that just have to come in. We're an arts organisation. We're full of hope and optimism, but we also have to balance the books. They just has to happen.
You were the first to be appointed both art director and CEO. Was that a cost-saving measure or are there benefits to that, do you think?
Well, I think maybe it was a cost-saving thing. I wasn't directly involved in the decision-making. The board made, but they took a view of the future of the company and wanted to have a single leadership model. The reasons at the time that were articulated were around improved accountability. So they wanted to just have one person who was responsible for all the decisions through to the board. I have to say to you, it makes it very easy to resolve conflict with myself. But sensibly speaking, the kind of the first of the modern era of arts administrators was an Austrian called Rudolf Bing. And he is sort of famous for running the Metropolitan Opera in New York, and also he was the first director of the Edinburgh International Festival, which is really the prototype of what we now think of as the International Arts Festival. And he said something which has always resonated with me, which is that the artistic is financial and the financial is artistic. In other words, they're inseparable. And I think sometimes we think of arts organisations and artists as people unable to reconcile themselves with the practicalities of the financial world. And that's not really been my experience. I don't see that. I see artists as very resourceful, practical people who, yes, they have ambition and ideas and vision, but in the end they exist within a fiscal envelope like everyone else does. And that's what I do.
When you were appointed, the chair said part of the reason you got the role was that you pitched a new way of leading the company that the board considered apt for our times. What is that new way?
Well, I'm a non-artist, so I'm the first person to run the company who is not a practicing theatre director. And so that's an interesting idea for us as a company and also for an industry. I see myself as a theatre producer, or I often describe myself as an arts administrator, which is a little bit like an insider's term because no one really knows what that means. But in the old-fashioned sense, you would describe it as an impresario, so someone whose job it is to pull together the ideas and the program and then to take that out into the world and produce it and sell it. And so what I'm doing is marshalling the artists of the theatre community into a program of ideas, which we then take to our audience.
What do you see as the Auckland Theatre Company's strength, and do you think that's changed in the past 30 years? I mean, obviously it will have, but how do you think it's changed?
Well, it has an incredible mandate from its audience. So right from the word go, it has had a big and growing audience. And this was, in some ways unsurprising because there was an audience for the Mercury. And when the Mercury went to God, they had to go somewhere. And the genius of Simon Prast in creating the company was to say, well, regardless of whatever happened at the Mercury in terms of its failings, there was still an audience, and so he created a company, and it's held its audience now for 29 and about to be 30 years. So the other thing that's happened is that prior to my arrival at the company, there was a very long and sustained period of building the company's physical and financial capabilities. And so this is manifested in the ASP Waterfront Theatre, where we have a home of our own. And we're very, very lucky and privileged to have a theatre that we can call our own, to have, in a sense, a tuaranga waiwai that is our place for our actors and our artists.
You've told other media that there's serious shortage of staff for, the backstage work, the lights and that sort of thing could affect upcoming productions. Is that still the case? Or
Yes. As it stands right now, in fact, we're in the process of putting on our biggest production in quite some time, North by Northwest. And yeah, it's a real challenge. The people that we have are outstanding, and we're very lucky that they're there. But every day it's a challenge to put enough people onto the roster because there is an industry-wide shortage.
What do you think can be done to overcome that? Because you're obviously contracting these people rather than employing them.
Well, this is interesting because I think the pool is the problem. So during the pandemic, what was essentially a casualised contractor pool couldn't sustain themselves, and many people left the industry and, of course, haven't come back, and you can understand why not. And so they can't be just manufactured. It's not, you can't pop someone on a course at the Polytech. Unfortunately, these are career people who've learned how to make theatre in a technical production sense. So we have no choice but to invest as an industry And one of the pitches that we've made to the Ministry of Culture and Heritage as part of their Regeneration Fund is a sort of cross-sector skills and employment development program, which sounds very prosaic for the arts and culture sector, but it's just an absolutely essential piece of infrastructure that's needed to allow young people to come through. And it's not a training program because we already have training institutes. It's an employment program about how we take them out of those training institutes and into stable employment, not just at Auckland Theatre Company, but in the sector more generally. It's something we'll have to change because we just don't have enough people and we can't work them into the ground, and the numbers of shows aren't going to go down.
Well, in fact, you've got 6 plays lined up for the 2023 season. Can you talk to why you chose those and what you're trying to achieve with those as the new art director?
Well, next year is our 30th anniversary, so we were seeing next year's program through the prism of wanting to celebrate the year, and in lots of different ways. So I guess at the core of it, we wanted to celebrate the place of the actor in the role of storytelling. And so we're featuring 3 actors who are kind of leading our promotional materials this year, who represent actors at different places in their careers and different levels of their relationship with Auckland Theatre.
One of those?
Yes, that's right. And in fact, that's the centrepiece of our year with Michael Hirst. We've invited him to do King Lear. And of course, it's just an indulgence to ask Michael to do King Lear on one level, but on another level, it is it's a recognition of a whole generation of theatre makers who are coming around Michael to make that what will for us be quite a monumental production. So what we'll see when we see his King Lear is a look backwards, but also a look forwards, but ultimately a celebration of artists making theatre. And that's the balance I was trying to strike with we don't want it to be a nostalgic program that's all looking backwards, because artists generally don't look backwards. And audiences certainly, there's only so much of that they want. So we wanted to make sure that we had a strong eye on our history to understand, to celebrate that and bring it forward. But we also wanted to make sure we were looking really firmly forward with new work and new plays and new artists.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your time, Jonathan Bielski.
Lovely. Thank you very much.